Distinguished members of the press, distinguished participants, last year in November 12th, we had the IICEC conference on energy trends globally and Turkey, and we received so much positive feedback. Once again, thank you very much for your interest on the conference. Now we are having this event from Sabancı Center. However, we only have the speakers and the panelists in presence. And because of the pandemics and the risk of infection due to the winter conditions, we just will have our participants as online. The IICEC Energy and Climate events of 2021 through live, we addressed thousands of people, and of course organically reached 10,000 of people. And the Istanbul International Center for Energy and Climate is actually getting its power from this interest. Thank you very much for the supporters and followers of IICEC. As you all know, Turkey Energy Outlook report published recently. And this is the very first in Turkey, and this is the 20th of our university and the 10th anniversary of the IICEC, quite a landmark study, I would say. IICEC, especially the public, the industry, and the academicians, as a triangle. And for the last 11 years, we've been working on this and very much fulfilling a niche area. And the honorary President Fatih Birol, and with his direction, we are actually the Northern Star of the field. 11 years ago, when we first established IICEC, our vision was to fulfill the gaps in this area and, of course, to be the leader in the field of energy and climate. There are changing dynamics of the field of energy, and there's, of course, the climate change as well, which brings new requirements, and we have to be prepared for this. So we're working on the roadmaps. And IICEC, for the time being, thanks to the roadmaps and the reports established and developed, at both at the micro and macro level, we fulfilled this intention. And the electric vehicles outlook, that is going to be the launching event, and the global and Turkey. And the IICEC, again, the President Güler Sabancı is also online connected and asked to express her best wishes and gratitude to all. Just have the outline as the opening addresses. The Executive Director of International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, will be delivering the opening address. And we have two guest speakers, Gürcan Karakaş, CEO of TOGG and Chairman of Automotive Manufacturers Association, Haydar Yenigün. And then the Electric Vehicles Outlook 2021 report will be announced by Bora Şekip Güray, Director of IICEC. And then before we move on to the panel, and Şule Kılıç, from EBRD cannot actually attend due to her illness, and we wish for good health. So the moderator of the panel will be a very distinguished expert, Mehmet Erdem Yaşar, and will be the moderator of the panel. So we'll be completing today's conference. So we have our moderator, Mehmet Erdem Yaşar, and Sinan Ak, CEO of Zorlu Enerji, Country Chairman of Shell, Ahmet Erdem, Elder, Association of Electricity Distribution System Operators, Özge Özden, General Secretary, and Zero General Manager, Özgür Özel, and Eurasia Chairman and ESHAR Chairman, Murat Pınar, will be the panelists. So I also would like to thank Borsa YMBW Executive Committee of IICEC, Eren Oğuz'un, Sanko Energy, Shell, Tokar, Zorlu Energy, for their sponsorship, and of course to you, our distinguished participants, online participants. IEA Chair and IICEC, again, the Executive Director of International Energy Agency, will be delivering the opening address, and then we will have a Q&A session after address by Fatih Birol. And Fatih Birol from the room will be answering the questions of the press members who are present now in the hall. Then we'll move to CEO of TOGG, Gürcan Karakaş. I would like to invite Fatih Birol, Executive Director of International Energy Agency, to deliver his talk. With my best regards. Thank you very much. My dear colleagues, my dear friends, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to all of you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'm so happy to be a part of this event. Why? Because this topic is especially a very important topic for our country. And with Bora and other colleagues a year ago, I offered them to have actually a report on this topic, and it's actually quite a short period of time, but they actually did a great work, and we will have the chance to listen to the launching of the report. But what I would like to do today is three things. The first thing is that for energy and climate, what is the situation both globally and Turkey, and then the new energy technologies. Is this a romantic story or whether it is going to be true or not? And a couple of words about electric vehicles. What is the situation globally? I would like to provide you with the outlook, and of course there are emerging trends and how it can affect us, and of course the role of the governments, which I believe to be so important. I would like to say a couple of words about these topics. So, first of all, the topic of vehicles, of course, the entire panelists are all experts on this topic, a great panel, Gürcan, Haydar, and all the other panelists, a great profile of panelists, by the way. The only missing thing, I believe, is that everyone is male. Next time you have to pay attention to have not only males in the panel. Now, first of all, the situation in the world energy markets are at ceiling prices right now. The oil, natural gas, coal. I mean, because of so many reasons, the prices are high. For example, in Europe, for composite price for three of them, the energy prices, more than sevenfold when compared to before the crisis. What are the reasons? Of course, there is actually a huge increase in demand after last year, because the world economy will grow by almost 6%, especially in the last 50 years. That is going to be the largest. And of course, which brings along the demand in energy. Of course, in the production and generation side, there are some mishaps, both expected and unexpected, and the third thing, I mean, in oil and prices. And the third thing is that, this is so important, the countries of oil, natural gas exporters in particular, although they have enough amount of oil, they actually did not deliver it to the market in particular on purpose intentionally, and therefore both in Europe and in Asia. Therefore, that's a major problem. I think this is something that we have to record, especially the winter months, the next 3 to 4 months. I hope it will not be so cold both in Europe and Asia, because if it is going to be so cold, there will be more demand. And of course, it will result in higher prices, which will be a pressure on the prices, something that we should all be aware of. Now, a couple of notes about climate. Now, once we said climate change, we always keep in mind about the energy industry. That's so simple. Why? Because looking at the 80% of the gases causing climate change globally is due to oil, natural gas, and coal. So the only thing to fix climate change, or the main way to do so, is actually to have clean energy, to make the energy industry clean. And some important steps are taken so far. And the most important thing, in my opinion, is at Glasgow, last month in the World Climate Summit. 90% of the world economy, almost all we can say, is right now covered by the commitments made by the countries in terms of energy. It means that by 2050 and some later, for example, 2053 in Turkey, 2070 in India, 26 in China. So there is a commitment for having a zero emission. And of course, the countries, so as to do so, in their own energy technologies, several countries are trying to figure out and working on how they can make this plan possible. As the International Energy Agency in India, Indonesia, and so we are preparing their roadmaps. So as they give a commitment in electricity generation and transportation and industry, which steps they have to take, that's what the plans are devised for. What I'm trying to say is that climate change at the same time is, of course, it is varying from country to country, but playing a major role in shaping the policies. Now, the energy prices, and especially the energy industry, is mainly based on the fossil fuels right now. So climate change is an important factor we have to underline. So now let's, for a second, keep this aside, okay? And let's go back. This is something that we do a lot at the International Energy Agency. I mean, myself, I'm so lucky, I should say, we are so lucky. Why? Because the energy investments globally, for example, based on different countries on which technology, we have access to such information. And just one observation for you here, in the world, there is actually a new energy system on the horizon right now, which is different from what we have right now. A new and a clean energy generation will be possible with a new energy system which appears on the horizon. So rather than the major nuclear power plants, there will be small modular reactors. In other words, smaller, and those that can be constructed much easily with less cost. So in the UK, for example, Rolls-Royce is now the leader on this with the financing from Qatar, and in the United States, again, the United States government with the company of Bill Gates, Power, the new technology as a name, so what we call. So I know that so many countries, especially the buyer countries, are actually placing orders, as I know. So about this new and clean energy system is up on the horizon, as I told you. These are the two cases that I provide to you in terms of the renewable, nuclear, hydrogen, and some others. But if you're asking me, one of the main pillars is the electric vehicles, in my opinion. Dear colleagues, there is going to be a rapid development. I mean, a development that no one will ignore. And that's the development that we observe in this field. And therefore, all major automotive manufacturers globally, the electric vehicles are the top priority on their agenda. So growth, how important it is, with a couple of figures. In 2018, 2019, out of 100 vehicles sold in the world, 2 were electric vehicles. This is just 2 years ago. For now, as of 2021, according to the figures that we have just a couple of weeks left to the end of the year, but from 2%, it actually reaches to 10% in a short span of time. I mean, such a huge increase in the share of EV, if you're asking me, is a major development. And of course, this occurs in 2 major markets, one being China. Well, actually, right now, 50% of all EVs globally in China, and the remaining 50% the rest of the world. Therefore, China is so active on this topic. For example, 15 out of 100 vehicles sold in China are EVs. And the second major market is Europe. Again, in Europe, it actually goes up to 15%, maybe a little bit higher. That is actually the total share of the EVs in the total number of vehicles sold this year. Of course, a very important country, the third, I would say, is the United States in the field of automotive. And in the United States, there is an economic recovery package, which will be introduced soon or being introduced for EVs and EV infrastructure. There is just going to be a major support. It's coming, and both with the Minister of and Secretary of Energy and with the Secretary of Transportation of the United States and with all major CEOs of major manufacturers, I know, and that's just going to be a huge wave. So if the third major market is also engaged in this, China, Europe, then the United States, then the growth numbers that I mentioned earlier would go high up, in my opinion. Why instantaneously the country started to support EVs? 3 main reasons for this. And I mean, of course, it may vary, this, I mean, ordering from country to country, but the first thing is environment. It's about environment. Why? Because electric vehicles are environment friendly, as we know, especially if the electricity is generated properly. But of course, in saying environment, everyone has a different understanding. For example, some respect to environment due to climate change. But China and India, for example, doing this so as to reduce air pollution in the urban areas. That's the reason why they focus on the EVs. I'm saying electric vehicles, by the way, but maybe we can talk about it later, the electric buses, which is a rapidly growing market in China. So the first reason why there is a rapid development in EVs is that it is environment friendly. Therefore, it helps both for the climate change and at the same time so as to reduce the air pollution in the urban areas. And the second thing is that so as to reduce dependence on oil. In particular, I would say energy supply security, and so as to reduce the current deficit. In China, in India, in several different countries, this is actually another triggering factor. And that's what we observe. Why? Because the countries are considering this both from economic point of view and geopolitical, because it's not correct to be that much independent, so that's an alternative. So that is the second reason, so it's have less dependence on oil. The third thing is that if you're asking me what is missed, maybe the most important thing in my opinion, the economic competition. China is going to be the leader of this new technology, whether country A, country B, in Asia, in Europe, or in America, and so on. That's all about competition between different countries and the different companies, and everyone would like to be the leading in the market, and they would not like to be in obsolete technologies. I also mentioned in yesterday's event, a couple of weeks ago, the meeting with the CEOs of the 20 largest automotive manufacturers, and 18 of those told me that by 2030, EVs will be their main production line. And the reason why they are saying this is not only to save the planet or to save the environment, but at the same time to prepare their corporations for the future, and so as not to lag behind. Just to wrap up, I would say three main factors I would like to mention about. The first thing is due to the environment, and the second is energy supply security, and so as to minimize the current deficit. And the third thing is especially economic competitiveness. So whether everything is going fine or not, of course not. There are certain problems, the battery issue, and of course the price, let's say, because especially when compared to internal combustion engines, the cost of EV is higher, and that's the reason why there is actually the need for a huge reduction in the cost of the batteries and their production, which is actually good news for all of us. For example, a decade ago in 2010, looking at the cost of the battery production around $1,100 US on average, but now it is $120, $130, even down to $100 in China, as mentioned. So there is a decline in the cost of production. But of course, we don't know whether there is a declining trend or not. I mean, the situation of the battery. I mean, battery is a topic that should be underlined so well, and because there are a couple of more issues to mention about battery. Now, with the battery industry, when we talk, between today and 2030, we expect a 10% of a capacity increase in terms of battery, especially the lithium-based battery. From Europe to Asia, Asia to the, again, US, there is just going to be an increase. Now, with regards to the battery and in general about the new technology systems, there's another major challenge that we have. Now, as you all know, as we have the vehicles, the biggest problem about is the price of the oil, the availability of oil, where it is coming, whether there are some geopolitical issues or not. But in EV, there is no need for anything like this. However, for, again, solar power plants or the wind power plants, when we construct them, there are critical minerals, And during production, they need such critical minerals. For example, lithium is being one of them, magnesium, cobalt. All these minerals are one by one, they are distributed all around the world, but unfortunately, again, 3/4 of them are concentrated on a couple of countries. So how we are going to, keep it away from energy supply security, I'm not sure about this. There's going to be dependence on critical minerals, which is actually a major issue. And it is not about where the minerals are, where they are extracted, but what is important is where they are refined and processed, especially the refining capacity. 90% of the refining capacity is in a single country, that is China. So many countries in the world right now, in Europe, in Asia, in US, under the leadership of International Energy Agency, working on establishing a system, a new system for energy supply security. We are, working on this, negotiating on this matter. But this is actually an important topic to underline. Therefore, there is actually the need to take the necessary steps on this topic. Now, before I conclude my words, dear friends, what I'd like to say is that the role of the government. Now, in the past, whenever there is going to be the new energy topic that is introduced on the agenda, it is not possible for that specific technology to be deployed all around without the support of the governments, especially while taking the baby steps. There's the need for this, the support of the governments, and looking at all electrical vehicles strategy in the world, there is actually a major role played by the governments. This is the case for China, for Norway, for the Netherlands. If the governments are not taking the serious from A to Z, it is actually not possible to be successful. What they have to do is a lot, actually. For example, charging station infrastructure is one thing, and about the priority on traffic. From that priority on traffic, then comes the financial incentives. I'm speaking about both the manufacturers and for the buyers, for the customers as well. And so I believe that the role of the government is so important. And of course, the electricity grid. There is going to be actually a demand for electricity, and therefore the grid at the same time should be made available for the need demand, and that's also the role of the government. Therefore, as I told you, and the countries where EVs are successful, we also have successful government policies. And I think what we all envy for and following, that's the story of Tesla and the financial crisis in 2008 and 9 in the United States received a lot of funding from the economic recovery package, almost $500 billion of support from the recovery package, the post-crisis package. So, and with the financial recovery package, gave $500 million to Tesla, which actually played a major role in the success of Tesla. Therefore, in concluding my words, and I'm sure we will hear a lot of nice things from our colleagues in Turkey, but this is just the outlook, the global outlook. I would like to congratulate IICEC, a great timing for this work. And I'm looking forward to, again, listen to the report. Thank you very much for your attention. Now, Bora, I think I will get the questions now. Yes. If there are a couple of questions, I can get the questions, then we'll move to the next speaker. Yes, please. Nuran Ayku from Anadolu Agency. My question is about critical minerals, Mr. Birol. One of your report, you mentioned that there will be a boost in demand for such minerals, but at the same time, you said a couple of words about supply in your presentation. Do you think there will be a supply problem? And especially the producing countries, how do you think they shape their supply and demand policies as the government? Thank you very much for the question. Now, yes, you're right. The only global study on this is that the one that I mentioned. If the governments is going to fulfill their commitment for climate change. For example, the demand for lithium will increase by 7-fold in a year, which is actually a huge thing. Once there is a 7-fold increase, what is going to happen? The prices will go up. And once the prices go up, then the cost of electric vehicles will rise. And eventually, the competitive edge will be less when compared to internal combustion engines. So many countries, they have the reserve for the critical minerals, but they have never worked on this so far. Canada, United States, Europe, Australia. These countries are now enacting new regulations and laws for the utilization of their lithium and nickel minerals. They're working on this, but my observation is that if this rapid increase and the rapid interest on EV goes up, I think the key here is that there is this second economic recovery law that is going to be introduced in the States, but there will be an increase in EVs, and which will actually push up the lithium and other critical mineral prices. So therefore, between the new policies and new regulations and the supply, there will be a timing issue. So the prices may go up because of the increasing demand. So that is the risk that I anticipate for the future. Yes, please. Hello, welcome. Orkun Yazgan from Environment TV. There is actually a great change, a huge change. It's taken into account, all discussed in the international events. And you're saying that a new energy system is going to be introduced, and 290 gigawatt record capacity that we're talking about. But in your recent talk, there is a gap between the commitments given and what is in actual. Would you please elaborate more on this, the recent Glasgow summit, and what is actually the perspective of the International Energy Agency about this topic? Now, I told you that I gave you some good news. If you're asking me, it's good news in the EVs. I mean, the share of EVs is almost 10% among all total vehicle sales. Another bad and the bad news is that the electricity generation fueled by coal this year broke a record in 2021. I mean, coal is the most important pollutant as a fuel for environment, and that's due to the Asia and the coal, not only Asia, also the coal fueled electricity generation from US and so it's at high levels. So I mean, it's not enough for the countries to do only the new things or the clean things, but at the same time, they also have to minimize their activities polluting the environment. One example, if it is not so technical, you know, the scientists, the world telling us that if there is going to be 1.5 degrees centigrade of an increase in the global temperature, that's okay. But over this, then we will actually have a brand new world. So that's 1.5 degrees centigrade of an increase. For doing this, I mean, it's not enough even if you actually did not establish new power plants. What you have to do is you actually have to decommission the power plants, coal power plants. There's actually a huge pool of coal powered plants, in particular in Asia. So in the upcoming decade, they have to be decommissioned as soon as possible. Of course, it is easy to say, but difficult to do because majority of the people in Bangladesh and China and India, they use it. I mean, how just you're going to decommission it? It's actually a huge problem. In terms of environment and in terms of the EVs, of course, EVs themselves, they do not have any emission, but if the electricity in the country is maybe 60–70% of the electricity is coming from the coal, then the net benefit will be reduced. Therefore, the electricity generation must be clean, must be decarbonized, renewable energy must be used, and if you're asking me, nuclear, possible for clean energy. So it will speed up the process, in my opinion, and therefore the EVs will serve totally clean. Unfortunately, between the commitments and the actualization, there is a gap. In the Glasgow summit, the UK government every year to the International Energy Agency is sending us a report which country said what. So it's going to be totally transparent, so everyone will follow the developments transparently. I talk more than my time. Let's get to questions later. We have very distinguished colleagues and I'd like to listen to them just like you. So I'd like to give an end to my talk and wish you a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fatih Birol, for the kind introduction and the keynote speech. I'm from Sabancı University, Department of Molecular Biology, Genetic Engineering. I'm a graduate of the department, and it's really my honor to be a part of this important meeting. We will continue with TOG, the Turkish automobile initiative group, and in this journey of manufacturing new vehicles, they've been taking important steps. They've been concentrating on e-mobility with the projects they're running. CEO of TOG, Mr. Gürcan Karakaş, will be with us today, and kindly invite him to the floor for his remarks. Hello, everyone. Welcome, both our audience who happens to be here physically and online. I would like to provide you an insight in terms of the relationship we're trying to build with the rest of the world. First and above all, we do see that the rules of the game is changing, particularly in the triangle of automobile, energy, and climate. There is a series of 3D mega trends. Number one is technology, which is also relevant to EVs. Because of the concerns of these climate change, we also need to figure out some solutions to these concerns. Number one requirement must be affordability. Actually, our inner combustion vehicles are also can also be competed with. On the other hand, the range of electrical vehicles used to be a problem, but now it's being resolved. Together with WLTP, it is possible to increase the range and fast charging. Now, under half an hour, 80% of the battery can easily be charged. Of course, when you take a look at the junction point of technology, electric vehicles is not enough by themselves. So as to also potentialize our electric vehicles, we need to put inside the mobility ecosystem all the factors required to maximize the potential of the technology. For that, starting with electric and electrical connections, going on with microprocessors. I mean, or from A to Z, we need to design it accordingly. Also in our social life, in our habits, that we've been seeing some changes. Anything that is about smart, with all of these objects, we are getting accustomed to comfort. At the end of the day, EVs is not anything different. We are not, if we're not to concentrate on the driving of the vehicle, we need to concentrate on whatever we can do with what is available at hand. And we will be able to do it with the smart devices. Before me, Dr. Fatih Birol emphasized the support of NGOs and their role in the process. That is extremely right, because it's not only about this project, but any time when the paradigm shift is being experienced, we do see the chance of getting support of the NGOs who had the chance of seeing this trend coming. Chinese started, but in my opinion, with the support of the Turkish government and with switch to the electrification project, we are going quite fast. There is also the implications after the COVID-19 crisis. We also see the regulators and the regulating authorities are concentrating on these issues more and more. So it's really a positive development in terms of electrification. As we take a look at the data pool, we also try to drive some outcomes in the process. The sector, there is no problem there, it's growing, although and with profitability as well. But in terms of the profitability change, we've been seeing major shifts. The gray column shows us profitability. And this is profitability for the inner combustion vehicles. We can also speak about this profitability changing. By 2035, the turquoise portion of the bar will indicate profitability as a result of data accumulated so far, and our aim should be to get about 40% of this profitability. We know that automobiles are developed and produced in 3 to 4 years. If we start now, targeting that turquoise portion of the bar for 2035, we will get our share from the blue zone, but otherwise we'll be squeezed into the gray zone, which means we'll lose out of our profitability. As we started the project, we asked ourselves, yes, we are setting off, but we need to take a look at why successful companies are successful, why others are not. So we put in our focus more than 20 companies. And what we've seen was that it's not about capital or the size that will have a say in the new generation cars. I mean, if you have, dozens of factories in the world, in some different places of the world, which is the VUCA world now, if you have to work in this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity world, then it's okay. But otherwise, you will fail. So in the new generation world, where the new generation technologies and innovation capabilities will matter, more lean or agile organizations will succeed. As we appreciate the status of innovation, we have to put the user in the center of what we are doing. Okay, as emphasized before, I also would like to turn to figures. After 2030, we will have less than 50% of inner combustion vehicles. Now, the average is 5-6% for EVs, but by 2035, you will see the scale growing. In Europe, it'll come quicker. But on top of this, there will be another problem. Who will supply the batteries? Who will be manufacturing the batteries? And where will the the items, spare parts will come? We need to get prepared for what is coming. At this point, we need to also consider this process in a holistic approach. This is what we do at TOG. We say we want to do more than a vehicle. So as to be able to do that, we concentrate on our smart car that also will go around the batteries. The concept, I mean, it's not like in the modern world just designing the concept of the car, but you also need to consider the future as well. From the outset, within the white paper, we've also indicated sensors, cameras, batteries that we position around our design according to the new generation design. As long as we can do it, connected, automated, chart, electrified matter will no longer be merely technology, but at the same time will be user oriented, smart, and also we have identified how we can become empathic. But how can a vehicle or a smart device be empathic? Smart telephones, you know, we're accustomed to them. They would support us, understand us. They will be function as an assistant. But actually, we want to have a different approach to this debate, taking the abbreviations use case. We define ourselves as use case mobility provider because they ask us abroad and about our vision, and we tell them we are use case mobility provider, and we are the mobility case user of Turkey as well. Actually, when it comes to our business partners, it is important to talk about the activities. But in this ecosystem, everything was gas and dust cloud at the beginning. So we've identified 5 pillars of working at the outset. Smart cities and smart living solutions. In a city like Istanbul, within a year, more than more than 2.5 days, we are just stopping in the traffic. Autonomous driving and also almost autonomous driving requirements are to be considered. Wouldn't it be nice if we would give you 2 extra days in your life? And everyone is working in different domains, but the goal is to be able to make plans in a seamless way. That will be only possible by just switching gears in between these factors of the ecosystem. We're talking about a smart grid. So we need to set up an infrastructure that would embrace both the locally manufactured cars and the ones to be imported. So in terms of balancing off the energy peaks of the country, I think this can also make up some synergies in terms of double-digit numbers. Data-based business models. And one thing about innovation is all the companies, we're all striving for innovation. But the truth of the matter is 75% of all the innovations today are stemming from corporate companies. By 2035, remember the 40% of the turquoise portion of that bar about profitability, more than 70% of innovation will be coming from startups. This is not our hypothesis, but this is what the independent research shows. Therefore, from now on, we need to concentrate on our needed technologies with the startups. The needed technologies, meaning the domains from the classical world, gamification, for instance. In our project, 3 gaming startups are working with us about the blockchains as well. For more than a year, we've been working on blockchain solutions. Maybe in the future, as we charge our vehicles, we will be using, we will be able to make a selection of the electricity. We want my electricity to be produced of wind energy. You can do that, and this is what we've been trying to do to differentiate. fintech is also the third example. But how come would it be related to automotive industry? But in every move that you're making, either as a driver, user, or a guest, you're leaving a footprint on internet, and somebody wants probably to buy it because it is worth a thing, either on blockchain or on the connectivities. You will have a centralized fineness to transfer this data. So we need to prepare the infrastructure for that. The world has been concentrating on data technologies for breaking horizons. Always speaking about innovations, about the new world, but the thing about us is, the focus is changing, and it must change indeed, because it's not like the old world. In the new world, when you take a look at the cost of the vehicle, the most important items are the engine, probably. So it will stay in the key points where the manufacturers of these are having a say. But in the new generation vehicles, three electronics and the software, as well as the batteries, will be the most critical components. So as to be efficient in your organization, we are standing more or less on the same line in this competition. But where is the solution lying? Cross-functional teams, specialized zones, agile structures. All this we can do to work in such teams. And if you are managing your organization based on these philosophies, then you would succeed. So the product development process will need to create a benefit to the end user. And the reason why we are just switching gears to this processes is merely that. People ask me about things, but they should indeed ask about the power of the batteries we're using, because it's what the difference will lie in. So when we're using the processors in the vehicles, mostly people are just asking us, why do you need such a strong processor? Not today, but maybe the day after tomorrow we'll need it. The design will not come every day. So we need to start off by making everything strong. I've already emphasized the place of startups, and it's not possible for anyone to do this change alone. Therefore, in 1 year, maybe 2 years' time, you will have the corporate audits. People will just make reports, and instantaneously you can transform your own company. But in this, we are also speaking about, for the future, a functional architecture. Maybe after tomorrow, it will be a central architecture. So anything that currently works in a distributed way will become a changeable commodity. And once you want to make an update or a change in the system, or maybe an improvement, you will find on the left side hundreds of engineers integrated. You will see on the right side just one person clicking a button for the update. So we're heading towards that. For today, it's just one company who has managed to do that. In the first quarter of 2022, we are going to start our launching to the market after the serial production. We're competing against time now. As we do so, we don't have the chance of doing everything at the same time. The domain control computer that we're using has been designed by ourselves. We are going to do the industrialization of this. Do we have the technology available in Turkey? Yes, indeed. Because, in the defense industry, we have well-trained engineers harmonizing it with the world of the smart devices. We find many solutions. And in the second control computer, it's about body control. As we go on, we will be providing also an improvement in that. By 26, we will have designed our central computer ourselves. How about the future of electric vehicles globally? What's the outlook? Actually, in terms of environmental friendly solutions, now, if we are still speaking about coal plants, doesn't matter how much electrical vehicles we have circulating in traffic. Therefore, there is to be a significant investment, a big transformation. And with the support of our shareholders, we want to be environmentally sensitive. For that reason, we have already built the cleanest facility in Turkey, in the world. And I can also go so far saying that it's to be the cleanest around the world. For that purpose, within, of course, our understanding of a holistic approach, we've been collaborating on various counterparts in terms of nickel, mangan, and cobalt technology. One of the leading organizations there we've been building a partnership with. Later on, we will hear our colleagues speaking about it, but what is important here is that the battery of the electric vehicles, it's a thing, it's important. We must produce our own batteries. Ours is 539 kilograms, and we cannot bring it every day from Hungary or Poland. But up to the battery, I mean modules, and in between the cells, battery management systems, package software. This should be in a package. The entirety of it must be produced by ourselves, so that we will be down in the technology. The precondition is to get into the cell technology. Therefore, the Cyclo Energy Storage Solutions Incorporation will also be there for the cell technologies. With this investment, we will be serving not only for the automobile industry, but also for other industries. Now that we have the sun, we must be in the position of storing energy. So there will be new horizons to come, not only for Turkey, but also in the region. We have responsibilities. Carbon neutral cells and recycling will be another solution item on our agenda. The company that we are speaking about is also a major one in China. Actually, since we have a holistic approach and we want to contribute to the solutions, we have decided that not only the batteries, but also about charging, we need to get in an investment. With the executive board, we've sat around the table and discussed how we can make a well coverage in terms of the charging stations. We need to take some responsibility there. So we built a new company which will be activated early 2029. If you will be attending CES January in Las Vegas, we would like to see you in our cubicle as well, because we're going to do our launching event there. Thank you. Was it too fast? Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Gürcan Karkaş, for your talk. Now, I would like to give the floor to Automotive Manufacturers Association, OSD, and 13 members, all global leaders, and working hard for the last 50 years successfully in the industry. And the chairman, Haydar Yenigün, will be together with us, and I would like to invite him to the rostrum to deliver his speech. Thank you. Good morning. Hello, everyone, again. and during the challenging days of the pandemics, I hope that this is just going to be one of the very last meetings that we're having online. Of course, we are just going through sometimes that we need more motivation, in my opinion. So I hope that very few time left for physical meetings. We listen to perfect presentations, and then I thought to myself while listening to the presentations, how am I supposed to motivate? Especially talk by Fatih Birol, quite inspiring talk, opening up the horizon for us. And Gürcan actually mentioned about a project of pride, the TOGG, which we all expect and looking forward to see. That's perfect as an infrastructure for my talk, because I will very briefly speak about my association, first of all, and then I will tell you something, maybe in a way in the form of a story, because the automotive industry is just going through some difficult times, especially in 2019. European Union actually gave the first news, and then recently in July 14, Mondial just announced the Green Deal. In a way, it was actually a clear description to the automotive industry, I would say. The technology, the economic order, the pandemics, all the challenges that we've been through. On the top of this, we now have our planet-related priorities, which actually must be the case. Therefore, as the automotive manufacturers, TOGG, which will be a new player in the market, and at the same time, for more than 100 years, the industry producing with internal combustion engines. So we're at the eve of quite interesting times, and I will go through this. Now, my association, as mentioned, we have 13 members. Since 1974, we aim to serve the industry. We have international connections as well, of course. And you can see the brand names in here, 3 categories in here. For example, some brands that are totally Turkish brands and the totally worldwide brands. And at the same time, the worldwide brands with Turkish partner, I mean the joint ventures, the global brands and the Turkish brands, let's call it. We'll listen to TOGG, that we listen to the story too. And so I'm inviting them to be a member to the Automotive Manufacturers Association soon, once they start the production. So our number of members will go up to 14 soon. So automotive industry is so important for Turkey, as I told you all the time. We care a lot for, like a baby. And in terms of creating added value, very valuable. And more than 5% of the Turkish GDP is produced. We have 2 million capacity, and it will go up to 2.5 million in a couple of years. These are the figures for 2020, by the way. And again, these are 1.3 million production, again, during the challenging year, 2019, 1.7 million previously. As for export, we have 15% of a share in the total share in Turkey's total export. 32-33 billion it was supposed to be, but as you all know, the semiconductor crisis, the pandemics, the shutdown, and so on, it of course affected both the production and consequently the export. So we have a decline in export numbers. What I would like to underline is that as the association, our main concentration is export. In other words, around 500,000 and 1 million of the market in Turkey at this 2 million capacity, I can say almost 85% of which exported. Therefore, Turkey, I would say, we are speaking about an industry that has direct contribution to Turkish economy. $6.8 billion of foreign trade surplus that we create. Sometimes I feel so sorry saying that we all import cars, which is not good and so on, but that's actually a figure that is proving it. So I just wanted to share it in particular. So let's go deep down, the employment and the R&D side of the topic. 53,000 is the direct employment in the automotive industry for Turkey. But if we include the suppliers and all, everyone in the chain, supplier chain, almost over 500,000. And investment-focused industry. Profitability is not so low. People believe that the automotive manufacturers are making so much money, but in terms of percentage from the perspective of the boss, I would say it is 5%. I think just one very good company made 11%, and Tesla is higher, 13-14% of a profit. But of course, since 2004, they actually incur again damage, but by last year they incur profit. So working with a profit margin that is so low, but as the investment is so high and the sales figures are so high, of course the absolute value profitability is high. Therefore, R&D is a must in this industry. Especially in the last decade, the R&D investments are being receiving so much incentives, and over 4,000 R&D employees and 157 R&D centers. And R&D, by the way, is serving export, but at the same time, this industry is making direct R&D export. You know, just like the dollar per kg is actually 0 kg, $106 billion as an R&D export. Therefore, we are speaking about quite high numbers. So these are pleasing figures. So all this effort, all these figures, what is the situation of Turkey? For Europe, in terms of manufacturing, we are ranking the 6th in Europe. For commercial vehicles, the 2nd. It means that ranking the 4th in Europe in total. And an interesting figure I'd like to share, not included in here, but looking at in terms of the vehicles imported by EU, both in vehicles and the commercial vehicles, Turkey is ranking the 1st. Mostly our colleagues in Europe thought that this is Japan, but no, I mean, known to be Japan, but especially recently, we just reached to a major level. As for the global figures, ranking the 15th in passenger vehicles and the 9th in commercial vehicles. One thing to underline is that we're just going through a major transformation process, and both of these figures, I mean, both the global figures and the EU figures, if you're asking me, in the upcoming years, if we continue to do the good things and transform, it will rise up. Now, after this background information, let's go to the topic of utmost priority. Now, for automotive manufacturers, they're always saying that there is urban pollution because of your vehicles and trucks and so on. But it is important to put it into figures, otherwise everything will be so hypothetical and the environment is so tense. So we'll continue to actually upset each other. So we try to put it into figures. That's the reason why. Now, I will share a couple of data sets with you, but what I'd like to underline is that they are from different surveys, but they say the same thing. The impact on climate change of an internal combustion engine, carbon dioxide during using the car, and the carbon dioxide while producing the car is 15% and 85%. Now, let's make it more clear. If from the very beginning to the end, I mean, from raw material supply down to the scrap, I would say, we are again, it's similar figures, but once we say the use of the car, I mean, during using the car by the driver, the contribution of the fuel and using the car itself, driving the car, 80%. So 80% of carbon dioxide emission, and the remaining is 20%. What are we supposed to do? We will have electrification. There is no need to tell you the story, as very well discussed by the previous speakers. But what I would like to mention in here is, if a gasoline car, an internal combustion engine, looking at the total carbon dioxide emission, if it is 100 units, let's assume, in a diesel car, it is 9% less. So which means that it means that diesel consumes less fuel per km. That's the reason why. As for the EVs, look at the graph on the left. Two things in here. One, if electricity is generated from fuel-based, again, in particular fuels, then it is 34%, like Poland, for example. But in Norway, because in Norway, a majority of the electricity generation is from renewable resources, therefore it is 84%. I can say the blue is almost none there. But of course, do not misunderstand me. I'm not saying developing countries, developed countries, it is different and so on. Please don't misunderstand me. Look at the graph on the right side this time. If 8 kilogram per carbon dioxide emission per 100 km, it is 7.5 in the UK, because their electricity is not clean as well. It's not about the level of development of the countries. It's about how the electricity is generated in a specific country. So our effort as the companies is actually to manage this transformation. But as Gürcan mentioned in detail, so I will skip this or quickly, that is to say, the customers consider protecting the environment as a priority, and they're putting it on the table for us. But they also want connected cars, autonomous cars, cars good for sharing, and therefore they want electrified cars. So for more than 100 years with ICE car, we create an ecosystem as the automotive industry. So we are face to face with not only one challenge, but more than one. And this is something that should be put into practice soon. I mean, by 2030, everything that I'm talking about should be real. Why? I will mention later. That's the Green Deal, because Green Deal is imposing this on us, saying that these are your commitments until these deadlines, and the countries are undersigning it. So the interesting story is that I say I'm also a member to the heavy vehicle side. They actually received a complaint from Siemens, and in the recent decades, the automotive industry always showed resistance to the changes. Why? Because you have to make a big change, a big transformation, and the automotive industry, with for the demands from the EU, is just being cautious and reluctant, saying let's do it slowly. But after declaration of the Green Deal, the very same automotive manufacturers, this time to be much more competitive, this time even are trying to do things earlier than the deadline set by the Green Deal. That's how they make their business plans. If you're asking me in terms of the raised awareness in the industry, it's so important. I mean, the electrification and all the technological transformations, especially carbon emission concentration and so on, how we are going to execute this, the answer to this question is hidden in the Green Deal. I mean, clearly, there is actually a guideline that is leading us, that is the Green Deal. I mean, of course, the Green Deal is not something to do with the automotive industry only, but we're speaking about a huge scope in here. And what we are doing is trying to actually get the definitions that suit us. I'm saying the goal, the target, and there is a transformation, and there is a consensus. So first you have to set your goals. I mean, we actually know the purpose, so we now need to set our goals and then how to do it. Now, that's the story I'm talking to you. The former targets, goals, the new goals. Now, again, with the new goals that I'm speaking about is actually on the top of the Green Deal, what the companies are supposed to do, but not included in the new goals. I mean, for example, by 2030, majority of the association members will transform all their vehicle production to electrification. Why? Because Turkish automotive industry actually is exporting over 85% to European Union, so that's a must to us. And there's actually no major difference with the commercial vehicles, but I just wanted to divide it. I did not include heavy vehicles in here, it should be 3. But as for the passenger cars, then will be followed by the commercial vehicles, then will be followed by the heavy vehicles, because it's much more challenging for the heavy vehicles, because they have to wait for the hydrogen technology to be introduced. So it probably will be over by 2040. I mean, therefore, Turkey, we are, as the automotive industry, will make this transformation possible earlier than the deadlines. Of course, we have thousands of things to do, and the very first thing is the charging stations that we have to do. You can see actually several companies in here. We already discussed about the technicalities, but especially cable charging, magnetic resonance charging, alternative vacuum, with those working with direct current and so on. I would say there is actually quite interesting technology, as huge technology as the automotive industry in here. And this industry is actually open to developments, and probably in the upcoming years, we will see in heavy trucks, for example, heavy vehicles. There were actually air cable buses in the past in Istanbul. Will be similar. Maybe we'll have air cable charging again, trams, or will be MR magnetic resonance charged from the ground. Or what is interesting is that with the glass particles in the car paints, they will get the sunlight and it will be translated into electricity generation. And then the electricity generated will be powering the battery. But it is a lithium-ion battery that we know now, especially for rapid charging, direct current charging devices that we require now. Now, what is the position of Turkey in here? There is actually a clear-cut target for Turkey. As we are among the emerging countries, of course, these declarations are so important. These are actually quite tight commitments. So, 2 clear targets, 2040, 2053. Now, by 2040, all companies will manufacture vehicles with 0 carbon. In 2053, the car park of Turkey will transform. And both targets, I would say, require us to work so hard. Looking at the share of passenger cars in the car park, it is more than 50%. And therefore, probably it helps us to have a wider segmentation, but in the commercial, the remaining 45%, the commercial vehicles, again, we actually have to work hard. Of course, in doing so, not everything will change depending on the technology. As you know, there's also the emotional side of it, how these vehicles will be purchased, sold, how this transformation will be possible, as Birol mentioned so well. And I'm just touching a part of his talk, looking at the countries that transformed their industry already. You can see turning the color to dark in terms of GDP, they are higher. So they've already started the transformation and made the transformation. And right now, we are talking about something that we have to catch up the same deadline. I mean, for example, per capita GDP is 7,500 in a country, and 45 to 50,000 euros of per capita income, and they actually have to complete the deadline requirement on the same date, which is not an easy task for us. And of course, a lot must be done. And one important thing I would like to mention, how we are going to succeed in this transformation. Now, I think the most valuable thing about the Green Deal is the circular economy. Now, as for the circular economy, so far, especially after World War II, there is the disposable concept, which emerged after World War II. Thanks to this initiative, this will change and this will save the planet. How? As a description for the automator, I mentioned about R&D, you know. While describing a new product, what we're also doing is we build it according to the former concept and try to have, for example, repairing a broken part immediately. But now, for replacement of the worn out parts and for their preparation for reuse, that's the mechanism we are supposed to build, for reuse of broken pieces. I mean, reproduction, reuse can be a better term. For example, a part of a seat. I mean, rather than throwing away the seat itself, repairing the broken part of the seat, for example, maybe simple, but a very valuable mechanism. If we call it circular economy, and if battery is given as an example for this, as you can see in the visual, that's the story I'm trying to talk about. So first you have to make the description of this, and then it must be built accordingly, and then it must be traceable. Then comes the digital technology. We need digital technology. For example, without blockchain, not possible to have a control over the circular economy. What I mean is that once you produce a battery, for example, if you ensure for the traceability, then it means that the circular economy will work properly. Now, we, as the automotive manufacturers, will do this or not. Of course, that's not the world that we'll look for. The supply chain, the dealers, all the stakeholders must do this at the same time, not only the manufacturers, I mean, from the raw material producers up to the end user and the recycling facility and so on, in the entire value chain that we're talking about. So, to the end of my talk, how we are supposed to do all these things. Of course, we have a lot to do. I mean, we have quite a long list. It's quite a long to-do list. The charging stations, about the generation of the energy, about reusing the batteries, and if they cannot be used on vehicles, for example, maybe they are reused in the households or in the industry for energy storage purposes. I mean, of course, we're speaking about the reuse of a battery, not only from a single vehicle, but thousands of vehicles. And of course, the need to change the regulation. And then we actually need to have the transition plan. And then the incentive mechanisms, as I told you, and of course, specific to Turkey, I should say, the taxation policy. I mean, must be restructured. Not flexibility or changing it if you are asking. I'm speaking about restructuring according to the new status quo. And of course, the lawmakers must actually manage this process as a mechanism. And lastly, of course, such a high level of technology requires qualified workforce. We don't have the robots yet. It's again the human that should make this possible, us, our employees. And therefore, the initiatives that we build our own technology. And we talked about our university with the president of the university, and they're doing great things, and our companies are also part of these works. And I mean, the universities should not only give education, but at the same time should make R&D, because it is the people are at the core. So it's very important for us to keep our people at home, and they must be freely producing technology in the country, and the companies should allow for this. I mean, rather than the hierarchy, we need agile working systems, as Beckham is requested by the new generation. So on the top of this is what we as the companies should do, and also as the lawmakers. There's just going to be the report to be announced right now, which is so important in my opinion. I would like to thank to all who contributed to this, and of course we have a great exchange of information with this, and I'm sure that this report will lead us the way, and I wish that it will be also a good report for each and every one of us. Thank you very much for your attention. Will there be Q&A? No. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yenigün, for your remarks. Now we are moving to Istanbul International Climate and Energy Center of Sabancı University. And Mr. Bora Şekip Güray is invited to the floor to introduce the report. He's the director of IICEC. Just one note for you. After this presentation, you will be invited to the floor for the family photo. Thank you very much, Melis Hanım, our president of the university, distinguished delegates, participants, welcome. And it's going to be my task to deliver the report to you. As already indicated by Fatih Bey, when we talked about the spine of this study, it was January. 11 months passed away and remarkable events took place, not only in Turkey, but also around the globe. As we worked on our study, we had the opportunity of talking to many experts, academia, industry. So I owe deep gratitude to all of them because of their contribution to the report. They're all acknowledged in the report. Before me, the speakers have already covered what's been going on around the globe: megatrends, sustainability, electrification, e-mobility in the junction. What we've done with the talk going on, 2022 plans, and the excitement of the Turkish automotive industry. So we believe that it's a very timely way of preparing this report. Previously, we had the Turkish Energy Outlook report. It was also a scenario-based approach. And this time also we used the Turkish electric vehicles outlook data, particularly for the transportation sector, land transportation, and electricity and energy data, all collected and used for the purposes of the report. For IICEC, public, academia, industry triad has been in the center of what we've done for the report. As we did the study, we got support from many organizations, institutions, and many other bodies. Recommendations are also provided as a part of the report, which I will be emphasizing at the end of my presentation. So quickly, I'd like to refer to two scenarios. One is by 2030. This provides the slightly one-third of replacement of the electric vehicle park. In this scenario, we will have the EV park reaching 2 million in Turkey, but of course there's really a lot to be done so as to achieve that. And Fatih Bey spoke about the role of the governments, and Haydar Bey referred to what needs to be done in detail. So we should first start with strong policy targets, and also the cooperation between the public-private sector and the academia must be emphasized. New business models will also drive the sector. The other one is a slower way of growth, where we do see that replacement getting 1/6 of the current park, almost achieving at the level of 16%, as a result of which by 2030 we will not have reached the figure of 1 million. Both the scenarios actually shed light to our future projections, and we've taken a look at what the two scenarios will bring Turkey to in terms of the energy outlook as well. You know, Turkey is a significant importer of oil, particularly for diesel oil, and how would that have an implication over the oil imports of Turkey? Turkey this year disclosed its objectives under the Paris Convention. Also, we must look at the emission performance of the country by 2030. And quickly, I would like to emphasize some of these figures. Firstly, in the oil maintenance, you will see that oil is replaced with clean energy. Therefore, electricity to replace oil is considered as clean energy, as IICEC. Not already exploited high energy capacity and potential of Turkey must be also exploited in the future. On one side, we reduce dependence of Turkey to international resources for oil, but at the same time, we use clean local and national energy. And cumulatively, you can see that it will be growing in years, but according to our calculations in the high growth scenario where we see 2 million, 5 billion barrels of oil equivalent energy will be saved in Turkey's oil consumption. To be able to do that, almost 6 terawatt hours equivalent of clean energy will be needed for Turkey. You will find monetary equivalents of that in the slide in different price levels. It's $7 to $75 per barrel this year, you know. In the high growth scenario, cumulatively, we will be seeing within the next 9 years, $2.5 billion worth of a saving. And for that, we need clean electricity. And the amount of investment for the clean electricity will be done by considering also the growth of the market in Turkey. We expect it to be at the level of 1.1 to 1.3 billion dollars, which tells us that getting two after an investment of one is what we can say. And it's possible to make one investment to reduce the oil prices and the oil invoice of Turkey by 2 times. Therefore, for Turkey here, we expect a significant macroeconomic gain. The second important data, I think, is about emissions. Again, 2 scenarios. First, starting with the graph on the left side. This is a cumulative greenhouse emission reduction and its implication in the road transportation. Road transportation is important because, you know, number one is electricity production with fossil fuels. The second one is the road transportation for the greenhouse emissions. It is also highly dependent on oil. Up to 95% is indicated by the previous speakers. The share of electricity and natural gas has not even reached 1%. Therefore, looking into the road transportation is another key in this high potential growth scenario. This high potential growth scenario will provide 10 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. What would it mean? Per capita today, we are consuming carbon dioxide. Therefore, the annual carbon footprint of 2 million people will be saved only by 2 million EVs, provided that we run the correct business models, policies, and frameworks. The graph on the right is a bit more pessimistic because, as referred to by Mr. Haidar, the steps taken by Turkey in Glasgow this year and the declaration also concentrates on the road transportation. What will be the peak in road transportation when and when will we have the net zero? And the high growth scenario actually can achieve that before 2030. Around 2028 or 9, electrical vehicle park will be approaching 2 million. On top of it, the conventional vehicle or also fuel economy will be improved. Plus, Turkey will be switching to railways or seaways rather than roadways. We will have a more efficient outcome also with the contribution of electrification, and after a peak the emissions will start to decline. So for the future projections, we'll have a lot better scenario by 2040 and almost supportive of emission zero by 2050. If you ask me, the most important aspect is charging. and batteries. And without further ado, I would like to also refer to the two important messages. If we want to reach a 2 million EV park, first, we must have a user-centric design. This is our recommendation to all the stakeholders. The steps taken in the correct way is just pleasing us, particularly recently. In this respect, slightly more than 200,000 sockets are to be also provided to the public use. Maybe most importantly, DC, the fast charging infrastructure, must be provided extensively throughout the country. All the stakeholders of the industry must undertake responsibility in this direction. I'm sure that the panelists will be discussing about their perspective in this respect. But what are the future implications on the electricity market? You can see that the blue bar is the annual electricity demand of Turkey, or the expected impact on the annual electricity demand of Turkey, which is nothing. I mean, if you take a look at the percentages, because by 2030, there will be a 6 terawatt hour. And this one, the blue bar corresponds roughly about 2%, maximum 2% of it. The second thing that must be managed there is the electricity demand of Turkey, which may be volatile, because we're speaking about the dynamics of the demand, which can be volatile. Charging infrastructure and the distribution network, how they should talk to each other, what kind of a planning we need for that, I think will be the critical debate of the near future. Overall, Turkey, of course, on the demand side, we will have some management issues. If we can take actions there, we would be able to limit the red bar with 5%, maybe with extra initiatives, micro networks, smart charging systems, so on and so forth, will have an implication on the outcomes as well. But I had the chance of taking a detailed look in some zones, but as you would guess, indeed, the electricity demand of Turkey is mostly concentrated in major cities such as Ankara, Istanbul, Izmir. This is actually the potential zone where we will see the EVs running on the roads for the first time. So I think the trajectory there must be managed properly so that we can have higher levels of that bar. Running the study, we not only made analysis, but also worked on the contribution of the scenarios. And in the roadmap to take us to that path, we've also concentrated on the opportunities for Turkey to grow. As indicated by the previous speakers, we've seen messages actually corroborating what I'm about to say. Some of these items I have to emphasize. The automotive industry is extremely critical for Turkey, as indicated in our report as well, because 6.8 billion US dollar of a surplus gives this industry. And with the employment of 400,000 people, and with some R&D dimension, with the human resources, with the digitalization, I think it's going to be a critical industry for that, for Turkey as well. Environmental sustainability dimension, including the batteries, should be another priority for Turkey. Turkey has been running some investments and research work about the cells, which we care about very much, as to be indicated at the panel. Also, there is a life cycle dimension to be considered, because we want a sustainable automotive and battery future that we need to start working from now. The technology is not about that, also digitalization and hydrogen production will be two more issues to be discussed in the period to follow. Rather than individually, concentrating on these areas, we need to position them within an umbrella, within a framework. with the strengths of each other, I think we will be able to bring it to reality quickly. And some of the policies have already been announced. Maybe it needs to be in detail to some extent, but we need the consensus of the sector on this policy map. If we can support this map with policies, I think, and IICEC thinks that in Turkey there will be a very good contribution of Turkey for environmental performance and technology elements of electric vehicles. I would concentrate a bit on our suggestions. There will be 5 important suggestions that we need to highlight as a part of the report. Number 1 is actually our number 1 priority hierarchically, and the rest, shouldn't be considered in a hierarchical order, but this first one is really important. Net zero transformation, being competitive in the Turkish economy for that. I think it's really critical for Turkey. Therefore, as IICEC, we want concrete, realistic, and reachable targets to be identified. We want electrification in automotive industry supported by mechanisms that will be more functional for the future. As I've just emphasized, I think the optimistic scenario for 2030 is a doable one. So we need a roadmap to be built for that purpose. Supportive mechanisms are various around the world, as also mentioned by the previous speakers. We know it's a fact that the cost is not at the competitive level yet, but the study also provides a lot of benefits for the environmental performance and economic performance as well. These all will get into a positive line in Turkish economy budget. So supportive mechanisms, we believe, is going to have a place in the faster electrification and renewal of Turkish vehicle park. This transformation must be secured by green energy resources. As the Turkish Energy Outlook study had emphasized on 2 scenarios, this time again we've concentrated on 2 distinct scenarios. You know that by 30-40% we have green energy production, which we believe is to reach 50%, maybe more optimistically up to 60% by 2030. Therefore, we will be positioned in between Poland and Norway, heading towards maybe getting more proximity to Norway. We'll have more advantages. Therefore, in the electrification transformation of Turkey, green energy resources must absolutely be supported. Our third recommendation actually is about a common mind. In all aspects of this common mind, public-private sector and academia cooperation is essential. Therefore, the target function must be public benefit. Actually, environmental performance and oil invoices discussed a lot. It has many dimensions, including sustainability and stability. Actually, in the automotive industry, technology-centric opportunities must be absolutely used for a competitive transformation. I think collaborations must be planned for the location of the charging points and their distribution around the country. And also there is the financing, the funding parts. We have to consider the trends in Europe, developments around the globe, how we can provide more funds and resources to this development. Actually, today, maybe it's not being emphasized too much, but the new business models must be extensive. Number 4 is digitalization. Of course, there are many technologies referred to throughout the report, but to highlight a few of them, we believe that digitalization and in complementation of that, smart systems and energy storage systems will be the top 3 technological systems to provide high value. In these technologies, we need to concentrate more on local production and R&D. Last but not least, to support all the foregoing, as emphasized before, the human resources potential must also be considered. Since it's going to be a new ecosystem, we will not be able to run it with traditional HR habits. Therefore, corporate entrepreneurship and at the same time energy, automotive and other industries HR must be prepared for this transformation. In all the talks we've run during the course of the study, people emphasize Turkey can become a regional actor. Mostly, we also know that we can also be a global player in Turkey because we've started taking the right steps in the right time. This would be my hope and aspiration for the future. Hopefully, our role will be to become a regional actor in this process. Thank you very much for your attention. I don't know. One more thing to emphasize. I think the reports and the executive summary have already been uploaded to the website. Probably you see the square code. If you can read it with your mobile phone, you will be directly referred to the website of IICEC, where you will find all the report itself, the entire non-abbreviated version, and the executive summary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bora Şekip Günay, for your presentation and for your talk. Now, I would like to invite all the speakers and especially our participants on the very first row for a family photo. Now, our conference will continue with the Business World panel. I just want the moderator and the panelists to stay there. Energy Eurasia, May, and EBRD Turkey, Mehmet Erdem Yaşar will be the moderator. CEO Zorlu Enerji Sinan Akkan, Chairman Shell Ahmet Erdem, Özgür Özden, General Secretary from Association of Electricity Distribution System Operators, Özgür Özel, General Manager, Zero, and Murat Pınar, Chairman, UEG, and Chairman of ESHAR. Yes, so the floor is yours, distinguished moderator. So we actually take it a bit long for the first part, so we have limited time for the panel, so I need to start right away. If you allow me, I would like to start with you, Ahmet, as Fatih Biro also stated initially at his talk. We just will be going through a different way. There is going to be the increase in demand and the price increases. And would you please a little bit elaborate on 2021 and your prospects for 2022? So hello, everyone, again. A great actual event that we are together with. And the report that is published today, announced today, I believe, will be actually a guide, a big helper for the steps to be taken by Turkey. Thank you very much for those who contributed to the report. Very actually, briefly, I will speak because about the global energy. Fatih, we already discussed after 2020 and in 2021 in particular, through the end of the first half in particular, thanks to vaccination and thanks to the measures taken for COVID, there is actually an increase in growth, and this also has its implications for our country. But of course, the global effect resulted in energy increase, especially with less production, with less inventory, and of course in the industry that has some restrictions, it increased as an it's reflected as an energy price increase, especially as we are also carbon independent. This also is reflected on the cost of our country. Of course, with the incentive and subsidy of the government, majority of this is not reflected to the economy, and this is prevented. But of course, in doing the sacrifice, the government at the same time asked the stakeholders, major stakeholders, to be a part of this, around 150 billion that the support by the government. And of course, industry base must be calculated individually. But if you're asking me, it is no more sustainable, both at the side of the government and in terms of management of the demand, and of course in the transformation that we are talking about. And there is a demand increase, and of course for the industry that should continue with the investments and employment, this is no more sustainable. I mean, just for expectations to 2022, I would say, I think this situation must be handled, and we're expecting the efforts to be taken on this matter. On the other hand, of course, one of the major events of the year also for our country, the Paris Agreement, ratification of the Paris Agreement, and at the same time, our roadmap for Green Deal, again devised. So I believe especially this will shape the future of the energy industry for Turkey for the future. Main expectation for 2022, again, in particular, the net zero carbon, again, roadmap until 2053 is prepared, and I believe all the stakeholders must be a part of this, how this is going to be financed and how it is going to be supported. I think it will be very useful for all stakeholders to discuss about this. In terms of consumption, as there is more energy demand in the country, it was more than the global demand. And I believe next year, if there is nothing unexpected with regards to COVID, it will continue to increase over the averages. In my opinion, I know we have very little time, and therefore, let me just conclude in here. I mean, especially energy transformation process after 2020, maybe what are the plans of Shell? The position of Shell. Would you please elaborate on this? I mean, maybe it would be nice to make this one round. So Shell, as you all know, is one of the companies that acted earlier. Since the mid-1990s, we've been working on this matter. And within the framework of Paris Agreement, we have the decision for net carbon zero. And that's our plan, and we're supporting it. And of course, in doing so, we start with the emissions from our own operations, and until 2030, in 3 scopes of our own operations, I mean, especially the energy resources that we get, that we procure, and of course the energy, use of the energy that we offer to our customers in 3 scopes will be 0. That's the plan that we have. Of course, in doing so, in our own operations, we look for productivity and use of diverse resources, but for the 90% of the 3 scopes, I would say, is of course the products that we offer to our customers. So to make it net zero also for the consumers, using new products like hydrogen, biofuels, and the fuels from waste. We have already started doing this, and for major refinery plants turned energy parks, that's the plan. And until 2025, the production of refined product will be reduced by 50%, I mean all products. And of course, another important thing, which is relevant to today's topic, EV charging stations. So again, we are just sourcing also for use of wind and hydrogen at the same time, especially electricity generation from offshore fields, green hydrogen. In terms of the charging of the electric vehicles, of course, Shell is not only providing for oil, but we have 50,000 points for the other resources, and I can say we offer the service for almost all EV users. So for electrification, again, in our own zero carbon target, we'll continue with this journey. We are the biggest, again, retailer as well from this perspective globally. So it is, again, in terms of partnership, and in European, for example, highways, we are a partner to a company that gives Blue Motion, again, over 60,000 electricity charging station availability. We acquired it, and Green Lotus in the United States, again, we acquired. So US-wide, again, grid that they have. On the top of this, about common shared use of the grids, again, they make software. And IICEC in the UK, which is so interesting. I mean, rather than traditional charging devices, there is, for example, the street lamps and so on. I mean, 3,000 or 3,500 of such. And until 2025, 250,000 charging points and 5 million by 2050. So fast charge, I mean, I can say we will have a charging station point by 50 km. I mean, it's not going to be different for Turkey if there is actually more demand. Of course, with the nice figures and the scenarios that we discussed, we will, in our own stations and in other points, we will continue to work as such. In Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, Bodrum, and in a couple of, again, intercity highways, we have such stations for pilot use, and we are closely following it. About this topic, for ease of use for the user and to make life easier for the EV users, it's very important to have a shared approach in the grids. Of course, there is competition, but I'm sure that there is actually the need to have a collective approach for this development. Therefore, the technical infrastructure is known much better than me by the other experts, which I believe would be so important. Thank you very much. In electric vehicles, once they are introduced more, what are the effects going to be on user habits? And from the regulation side, what has changed or what must change so as to further? I know these are two different questions, but I would be happy if you answer both. Well, of course, as you all know, driving in particular with gas-powered, the particular gas-powered cars, you just get it from the station and you continue to drive, but you do it at homes, at the malls initially. Especially those with high income level prefer EV in Turkey. They have their own parking lot and they have their own dedicated place for charging. But if you want to deploy it more and have more number of the car park, then also in public areas, especially in the places that belong to the local government, there is the need for huge investments, and they have to be synchronized with each other, and they have to be made accessible to the public. This looks like the difficult part in the upcoming period, because as much as I observe, of course, the local governments are trying to take some initiatives on this matter, but right now they really lag behind. I mean, they have to change their way of thinking, and I mean, they just cannot take initiative. Probably they have to be in close connection with the central government. And so this slows down the process. And looking at the growth trend in Turkey, it is mostly at the private areas, but it is a bit slow in the public areas. But as you mentioned, the most important thing in here is the regulation. The regulations are not completed yet, which is not good for us. TOGG is about to arrive, and the automotive manufacturers at the same time will start selling their cars in Turkey. So many uncertainties and so many question marks. For now, for example, whether electricity will be, for example, sold over kilowatt or minute. If they park, there is no connecting cable and so on. So the answers to these questions are not regulated yet. So everyone is trying to act on its own. But recently, the draft bill passed the parliament, and the electricity market regulatory authority is going to be in charge for this. And of course, the number is few there. I mean, we talk as if there are so many people, but that's not the case. When we go to the meetings, just a bunch of companies attend the meeting. So about what the future should be, even, for example, the automotive manufacturers are not represented there. For example, we as the energy companies and with Echarge, us and a couple of small players, TOGG sometimes attend the meetings, but other than that, no automotive manufacturer. And if they would like to sell these cars, they have to be a part of the regulatory process. And again, automotive manufacturers and those that are trading the cars must join us. Hopefully, maybe we start slow and we're a little bit like behind, but just to catch up with this, I guess there'll be more investments. But the biggest problem in here, in my opinion, is especially the high circulation during holiday times must be met. And in the automotive industry, as you all know, once you get your gas, you can go so far, almost 1,000 kilometers of a range that you have. Once you get your gas, then I mean, you can travel so long without stopping by the next station. It is 500 km for EVs, but in our country, unfortunately, in the highways, we like to drive fast. And of course, once you drive fast, it goes down 200, 250. So there must be more frequency, opportunity for more frequent charging. There are 5,000, 6,000 cars in Turkey. There is enough now, but if it goes up to 15,000, 20,000, 50,000 EVs in a couple of years, which would be the case, then during the peak times, we need the infrastructure, which is not existent yet in Turkey, to meet the requirement. I believe that there is the need for some incentive mechanisms of the government, maybe 3 or 4 times or 5 times, maybe you will be using some of the systems, but you have to make this investment. And it does not have any commercial return. And There will be no return on investment on these points. Therefore, the incentive mechanism is a must. And the Ministry of Trade has some plans for this, as they mentioned. There was supposed to be a tender to be announced by the end of the year, but unfortunately, it does not happen. I don't know, maybe next year it will be speeded up, because sometimes something would happen, everything is fixed, and investments are already made, as happened in renewable energy. They never made solar, for example, investment. It is 6,000 megawatt in a year, and then we stopped again. That's also interesting, but it can also go faster than expected in this field. But this is the most important thing. I mean, it's okay in the city, it's okay, but intercity transport, especially during the peak times, the holidays, the vacations, the times, and so on, there is the need for the infrastructure to meet the requirement. We need incentives for this. So once the cars are on the road, you can make better sales. Thank you. I would like to move to Özgür. The main topic during the talks, opening addresses, was the battery production. So would you please mention about Zero, your plans, the partnership that you have, and energy storage site, as Bora also discussed in the open talk. Zero, what do you plan? I don't know, maybe you can also consider the potential, not only Turkey, but the region as well. Thank you. As Gürcan stated, the EVs are all designed around batteries. They have to be designed around batteries. Therefore, as TOG, the very first thing we did was we select our battery partner. And with the battery producers, we talked to them, and we had a detailed set of criteria. One being energy intensity, the other cost, logistics, and producing in Turkey, warranty conditions, and some, again, durability, reliability. So we selected our business partner. And one of the main drivers was actually the energy concentration. That is the watt per hour energy in the battery. This affects the range. Once you said electrification, I mean, there must be no concern of a range by the users, both in terms of the battery and in terms of the charging stations. For instance, by 10 to 25% advantage in terms of electricity concentration. They have such a technology. So as a business partner, we identify and we start a strategic partnership negotiations. And our goal in here is to produce in Turkey, local production, and at the same time to get into the main technology, because this is actually a topic of core competency in the long run. And in doing so, looking at the battery production process, two things important. One being the chemical and the mechanical. For the chemical side, it starts with the minerals, again, cathode, anode, electrode, their production and their assembly as the cell. And in the mechanical side, the cells are turned into a module, and the modules are included in the battery management system with the thermal systems packaging together, and therefore having the battery unit. This is not only the battery package. I mean, producing it is not the necessary competence. It just will provide you a logistics edge only. And therefore, we have to be a part of the cell, we thought. And in doing so, we observed that we have two advantages. One being, I mean, about cell production in particular, and especially Mr. Biro also mentioned about the potential, and at the TOGG side, one of our shareholders is Zorlu, nickel, manganese, and cobalt. They have minerals, and our Chinese origin partner, also China, has these minerals. Therefore, that's a strategic advantage that we have. So our plan, first of all, is next year our production facility will be ready. And in a way, in parallel to the production plan of TOG, that's how we will be organizing our production. And then right after that, what we're going to do is to develop the R&D, including cell R&D, and we will grow our team. And by 2026, the cell producer in Turkey will start local production. And of course, there will be the capacity increase phase. And this is not only about TOGG, of course. We also would like to serve to the other OEMs in the automotive industry and also non-automotive industry, in particular, two-wheelers, for example. Industrial solutions is a part of it. And as the potential, all this climate change and transformation to renewable energy and so on, fixed and stationary storage facilities, energy storage facilities, which are going to be important to us. And as for the demand, 300 gigawatt hour of a battery demand now in the world. By 2032, it will be 2,900 gigawatt. And despite all investments, the supply will not catch the demand as we anticipate. In Europe, for example, 1,000 gigawatt hour of investments announced, and looking at there are some proven players, but at the same time, so many startups with no technology, and they will be subject to natural selection soon. But what we predict is that just like there is a window of opportunity in the EVs, same would be for the batteries. Therefore, both as the company and as the country, as we invest at the right time, it means that we have a good strategic advantage. And the technology, especially as it is at the do it at the right place as the geography. We have actually a customs union with the European Union. And of course, within the framework of the agreement, it's not going to be only limited to Turkey, European Union, I mean the continental Europe, Russia, Turkic republics, Middle East, Africa. They're part of our partnership in this Paris network. The CIRO would be the one responsible for this entire structure. And in doing so, we somehow will also contribute to the energy transformation of the countries in the region by this way. Looking at our very first business plan, total of 20 gigawatts per hour. And out of this, 5 gigawatt will be for fixed battery and energy storage. And the other will be used for automotive, mainly TOGG. So just to sum up, I would say, doing the right thing at the right time. That's what we did, and we did it at the right place. So we're so excited. And two figures I would like to share with you in doing all these things: 30 billion Turkish liras of an investment plan that we have, and this contribution to the country until 2032, I mean, will be 30 billion euros contribution to GDP, and for reducing the current deficit again until 2030, 10 billion euros. And therefore, it's a critical task. And from a global perspective, I would say it will have a good contribution to our country.
Thank you for the detailed assessment. Turning to Mr. Özgüren, the other thing that we need to concentrate about is the networks. As ELDER representative, what do you think the role of the distribution companies can be? Plus, one thing highlighted in the presentations was about the burden of EVs on the network, on the grid. What kind of grid investments we should be doing for that? Thank you very much, IICEC. Thank you for the event. And also congratulations about the report, which is quite timely. Very briefly, I'd like to refer to the existing conjuncture. International Energy Agency published a report in 2019. 17% of the total vehicle stock will be electrical vehicles by 2030. And by 2050, this is expected to increase 1 billion, which is important as a global trend. For the local trends, there is the local manufacturing. There are investments of TOG, and Zorlu Group and other companies are already producing charging stations. Therefore, on a national scale, we have an impact zone in terms of the interaction with the industry, users, and production. But totally, there is this state policy as well, because, March 2021 Economy Reform Action Plan foresees that by the end of this year, electrical vehicle charging infrastructure must be initiated. Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, Electricity Planning Authority have been authorized in this respect. The legislation is about to be published on that. Therefore, when we sum up all the trends, there is this main target of providing proper coverage for Turkey, east to west, north to south, city to rural, and the aim ultimately is to have a properly functioning infrastructure for charging stations. Because of the conditions in Turkey, it's not possible currently to undertake this responsibility only with the market initiatives. Currently, because of the production costs, which have raised recently after the pandemic, this decline trend has finished. But again, it looks like there is a long way to go in terms of the investments. Secondly, socioeconomic development level is not homogeneous around the country. You're making investments, but in urban places like Istanbul and Ankara, and in between the highways between these cities may be more rational. But to the east of Turkey, we cannot speak about the same rational level of using these systems. Therefore, it's an egg and chicken story in terms of coverage. Once you provide the infrastructure fast for the charging stations, probably you can expect a faster coverage for this technology. Electricity distribution companies may take a role there, or other mechanisms as discussed by Mr. Sinan can also be possible. But in my opinion, it will be the electricity distribution companies to be the fastest way, because the charging stations are integrated with the grid. They would bring along an additional burden. Therefore, selection of the connection spots and providing of an urgent connectivity would require an operational and economic optimization. So there is a technical aspect to it as well. Electricity distribution companies are there to play a role. And also the market regulation is important, plus in critical main arteries and in spots where the investment is not feasible, the distribution sector may also take a role for an optimum modelization. Technical competencies, I think, would be the main reason for that. Plus, in terms of business models and tariff structure, proper working conditions must be provided. Actually, these costs have their implication on the society would be, as always, debateful. But it was probably Mr. Fatih speaking about it. But electric buses will be a part of our lives as well. Therefore, as we use electric vehicles, we will be a part of the system as a stakeholder. Plus, once we use mass transportation, we will already provide a contribution. So in terms of fairness, I think it will also be accomplished. Therefore, quite rapidly, we want to run towards the climate targets of our country. This way it will be possible, plus growth, employment and technology will be the other side of the coin. And in the rest of my presentation, I want to highlight some aspects. Grid connectivity is extremely important. You know, there are representatives of sectoral players. As we talk to these players, people keep complaining about connectivity processes. So as to accomplish those processes in a faster way, we need to know about the new role of distribution companies. Also, we've spoken about storage, surplus, production. They all will be connected to the grid. Therefore, distribution companies will also function as the grid operator in the coming period. Therefore, flexibility and resilience will be more important. To be able to accomplish these two criteria, I think the electricity distribution companies must provide approval to certain aspects of the system. EPDK also provided this aspect. Optimization of costs is extremely critical so that we will not be pushing the boundaries of the consumers. Plus, if there is, you know, a different kind of planning, e-mobility may be halted. Plus, consumers such as households may be losing their grid connection because of extreme burden on the grid. Therefore, we need fast charging facility in terms of the e-mobility system. Green renewable energy must be priority, and the equipment to be used there should be recyclable or reusable in different parts of the grid sockets, and the other components of the charging stations will be standardized to maximize public interest and to lower costs. Doing that, of course, we need to make an investment here. The most important thing is about the peak load projections. As the figures have been provided, we've been also defining a model within the association which corroborate with the figures provided by Bora. We've defined figures. There are 21 electricity distribution spots, and load projections were also extrapolated by 2030. Average load also anticipated. Weekend and week time projections considered. We've taken the existing, the inner combustion motor data. At the end of the study, we were able to provide about 5.4% increase in the burden and 4.2% increase in the weekends. And in some regions, the extra capacity had to be increased by 10%. Of course, there will be further verifications in these figures, but we must consider the peculiarities of geographical reasons as well. Of course, there will be stagnations, and some will be because of our urban planning, and we will need to develop solutions accordingly. Some can be listed as follows. You know, in cities, there are high-story buildings, and it is probably going to be a challenge for these intense areas for charging stations in Ankara, Kızılay, and Istanbul. Gayrettepe will be the challenging locations for charging stations. And especially in times of traffic jams and heavy traffic, there will be stagnations. Also, especially the underground transformer house places are going to push our boundaries. Micro project solutions can be started, mobile service providers, which can be used on and off, and smart demand projects can also be considered to lower peak loads, and in the years to follow, by the electricity to be delivered to the grids, I think it will be possible for us to increase the load. Thank you. And Mr. Murat, and you've been one of the leading companies in the sector. What do you think about the future of e-mobility in Turkey? As a result of that, Do you think that e-mobility will have a good share in sustainability, sustainable cities, green cities? These are the themes that we've been working in cities such as Izmir, Ankara, Gaziantep for green urban planning. At the point of sustainable cities, what will be the share of e-mobility? Thank you. Maybe we need to start with what we can place under this broad umbrella as sustainability. What is there for the energy world? There are, a cascade of trends. Decentralization is number one. 5Ds, e-mobility, solar, all will be fitting there. Decarbonization, solar will be again there. Deregulation is liberalization of the markets. Democratization, triggering involvement of everyone in the market, common sharing of data, and digitalization, a must that is a glue to keep everything together. These are the global trends. What is there? Electrification, urbanization, efficiency, and renewable energy. Urbanization and electrification are two distinct entities because this is not a problem for Germany, for say. For electrification, there is no new demand, excluding EVs. But in Turkey, number one is we've been talking about the demand effects and grid effects, but even if we don't have the EVs coming, the electricity demand in Turkey is growing. Plus, there will be the electrical vehicles coming. And as for electric vehicles, we are speaking around batteries. Yes, this is what is the technology is about, but we need to design it around human. Now, we're still speaking about the 4-passenger cars from the American dream. But will it be the case of the future? Will everyone be looking for 4-seat cars, or will it be micromobility to be on the forefront? These are question marks, but we need to consider the dynamics in Turkey as well. As we go through this process of urbanization still and immigration into the cities, new demands for grid connectivity is also increasing. And by 2030, we expect the trend to go on. But what will be the peak coming by 2029? We expect this peak. And we are now getting everything so quick now. What happens if we get to arrive there faster? Grid load, but in the California, for instance, according to old data, 20% of the cars is electric, but its impact on demand is 13%. Out of 6,000 cars, 3,000 is already in Istanbul. Where to grow? It indicates in the peak hours of Istanbul, these vehicles will be consuming the electricity to be produced for 10 buildings. So end to end, we need to consider this. And coming to the smart cities, it's not enough to have smart electricity, smart computers, but at the same time, we need smart traffic. We are focusing around human, and we're expecting to spend our life. So it's so clear that we are spending 6 days every year within our cars. If we want to concentrate on human beings, we also will have to consider internet connectivity, live connectivity, and we need an active network, a walking active generator. You can use it so clearly when there is a blackout. When there is a blackout in the grid, I can easily call cars for demand side management. And eventually, altogether, I think this is going to be a new mode of living. This is what we're working on, technology, regulations, practice. With the leaders and managers, we can do all of it. But first, we need to consider asking people, what is to be there in the future. And I think we need to get prepared for them all together. Thank you. How about sustainability in the cities? We have a project with UNDP in Ayvalık. Yes, maybe the cities are more complex structures and it's not happening overnight to make them smart, but we can start smaller as well, from villages, for say. And there was this microgrid project of the UNDCP. Actually, microgrid, not necessarily a village, maybe towns, but once you build that structure, our dependence to fossil fuels and $85 billion will just go down to 35. So I think it'll have a direct impact on our deficit. So if we can make it happen, and the ecosystem is not doable only by the companies, it needs the public, government, regulators, municipalities. I think we need common minds. Thank you. I need to keep the panel short because of the delay. I'd like to thank all the audience and would like to thank IICEC for the event. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much for the executive committee members of IICEC, Sanko Enerji, Eren Holding, Shell, Sokar, Zorlu Energy, for their hosting, to Cenk Alper, Sabancı Holding CEO, and you very distinguished participants. Thank you very much for joining us. And all the participants, online participants of this conference, and all the fellows of Sabancı University IICEC, we wish for a good, healthy, and happy 2022.